Karna, Frishesna, Jayadratha, Kripa, and Drola's son and Aswathaman charged forward on their gleaming chariots. Their horses' hoofs pounded the earth, sending shock waves through the air as they thundered towards Arjuna. The Pandava warriors' sound of cants blared through the air, filling the sky and the earth with an ear-splitting cacophony. Vasudeva, also known as Krishna, and Dhananjaya, or Arjuna, blew their own cants to Vedatta and Panchajanya, creating a sonic boom that seemed to shake the very foundations of the universe. The Kaurava warriors were filled with rage and determination, eager to protect Jayadratha, who had been captured by Arjuna. Drola's son Aswathaman fired arrow after arrow at Vasudeva, striking him 70 times. Arjuna retaliated with 100 arrows of his own, piercing Karna, and Vrishesna. Battle raged on, with each warrior trying to outdo the others in feats of bravery and skill. Salya, the ruler of Madra, fired 10 arrows at Arjuna, while Jayadratha struck him with 77 shafts. Purusarvas pierced Vasudeva with 3 whetted arrows, their golden tips glinting in the sunlight. Arjuna, fueled by rage and a desire to protect his friend Krishna, unleashed a torrent of arrows upon his enemies. He cut down Salya's bow, striking him with 10 arrows and piercing Kripa with 25. The air was filled with the sound of clashing steel, the scent of sweat, and blood hanging heavy over the battlefield. As the fight continued, Arjuna seemed to grow stronger, his arrows flying true as he struck down each of his opponents in turn. Purusarvas, enraged by Krishna's capture, cut off the god's goad hand, but Arjuna merely lawed, firing hundreds more arrows that tore through the Kaurava ranks like a storm. The battle was a maelstrom of chaos and destruction, with warriors on both sides fighting for their lives. Sanjaya watched in awe as the two armies clashed, his heart heavy with sorrow at the carnage unfolding before him. The sun beat down upon the battlefield as King Dhritarashtra gazed out at the sea of warriors. He turned to his charioteer Sanjaya and asked him to describe the various standards that adorned the cars of both the Partha and Kuru warrior. Sanjaya began to speak, his voice carrying across the din of battle. Hero, king of the diverse kinds of standards, had shone like blazing flames of fire upon the cars of those high-souled warriors. He described the golden standards decked with strings of gold and adorned with banners of every hue. He spoke. Sanjaya's eyes wandered to the car of Arjuna. Dhananjaya, the wielder of Gandhava, the standard bearing the sign of the fire's face and tail like that of the lion, seemed to inspire fear in that battle. The standard was a sight to behold, its many banners fluttering in the breeze as it danced upon Arjuna's car. Sanjaya continued his description, pointing out the standards of Drola's son Karna and Adhyaratha's son. Each one was more resplendent than the last, adorned with gold, jewels, and gems that shone like stars in the sunlight. The bilingual standard of Kripa, the preceptor of the Pandavas, seemed to radiate an otherworldly light, as if it were a manifestation of the gods themselves. As Sanjaya spoke, the battle raged on, with warriors clashing and arrows flying through the air. King Dhritarashtra's son Duryodhana led his troops into the fray, his standard adorned with an elephant made of gold leading the charge. The elephant's standard seemed to tower above the other standards, its golden chains tinkling like 100 bells as it shook in the wind. But Arjuna's standard stood tall among them all, its banners fluttering like fair ladies dancing in a sporting arena. And at its center Arjuna himself sat, his eyes fixed upon the enemy lines as he drew back his bowstring, ready to unleash a shower of arrows upon the Kuru warriors. The battle was fierce and chaotic, with warriors on both sides clashing and falling. But Arjuna stood apart, his Gandhava shining like a blazing fire as he stretched it across his shoulder, ready to vanquish all who stood before him. And as the day wore on, the outcome of the battle became clear. Arjuna, that mighty armed hero, would emerge victorious, his standard leading the way. As the sun began to set, casting a golden plough over the battlefield, King Dhritarashtra's troops retreated, their standards fallen and their warriors slain. The king himself sat upon his throne, his eyes fixed upon Sanjaya as he spoke of the wonders he had witnessed. The sun beat down upon the battlefield as King Dhritarashtra asked his charioteer Sanjaya about the events that had transpired. What happened to Arjun's prey, he inquired. Sanjaya began to rack out the tale of the great battle between the Panchalas and the Kurus. As the afternoon sun cast its golden light upon the warriors, Drona became the focal point of the battle. The Panchalas, eager to vanquish him, unleashed a torrent of arrows that shook the earth. Their car warriors with bows drawn and quivers full charged towards Drola's chariot like a stormy sea. crashing against the shore of Varakshetra, a mighty warrior from the Kakya clan. Led the charge, scattering arrows like autumn leaves before him. Shmadurta, renowned for her bravery, shot thousands of keen arrows at Varakshetra. But Trishtake to a bull among warriors countered with equal ferocity. The battle raged on, with each side exchanging blows and neither gaining the upper hand. King Yudhishthira, determined to emerge victorious, stood firm at the head of his division, resisted by the great Drona himself. Vikarna, Dhritarashtra's son, clashed with Nakula, while Dharmuka showered Sahadeva with arrows. Satyaka, a skilled warrior, fought valiantly against Vyvradatta, and Samadatta's son faced off against the 5 sons of Draupadi. The encounter between Bhimasna and Alamwasha, Drala's first Rakshasa's son, was akin to the legendary battle between Rama and Ravanus. The fight intensified. Yudhishthira struck Drona with 90 straight shafts, hitting his vital parts. Enraged Drona retaliated by striking Yudhishthira in the chest with 25 arrows. The king, however, remained unyielding, displaying great lightness of hand as he deflected Drola's arrow. Shores Drola, filled with fury, cut off Yudhishthira's bow and then covered him with 1,000 shafts, making it seem as though the king was dead. The Pandava army cried out in despair, thinking their leader had fallen to Drola's might. But Yudhishthira, undeterred, took up another excellent bow and cut down the arrows shot by Drona with his new bow. He hurled a dart capable of piercing even a mountain, equipped with a golden staff adorned with 8 bells that shook the heavens as the dart flew towards Drona. The entire army trembled in awe. The mighty Yudhishthira roared like a lion, inspiring fear in all who heard him. The sun beat down on the battlefield, casting a golden glow over the chaos that unfolded before it. King Dhritarashtra's army clashed with the Pandavas, and in the midst of this maelstrom 2 warriors stood out for their bravery and skill. Shmadurta, a mighty car warrior from the Kakya clan, charged forward with his bow at the ready. His opponent Varakshetra was no less formidable, and the 2 began to exchange arrows in a fierce duel. Shmadurta's aim was true, striking Varakshetra with many arrows in the chest, but the Kakyan prince refused to yield, determined to pierce through Drona's division. Undeterred by his opponent's valor, Shmadurta cut off Varakshetra's bow with a well-tempered shaft, and then struck him again with a keen arrow. However, the Kakyan prince was not one to be defeated so easily. He took up another bow and smiled at Shmadurta, his eyes blazing with determination. With a swift motion, he sent a broad-headed shaft flying towards Shmadurta's chariot, striking it and sending the warrior tumbling to the ground. As the battle raged on, other warriors joined in the fray. Viratamon, a great bowman from the Pandava camp, clashed with Trishake, a brave prince from the Chidi clan. The 2 exchanged arrows, their aim true and deadly. Their combat was fierce and worthy of being witnessed by the gods themselves. Viratamon finally gained the upper hand, cutting off Trishake at his bow and twain with broad-headed arrows. The cheetah prince then took up a fierce dart made of iron, equipped with a golden staff, and hurled it at Viratamon's chariot. But the Pandava warrior was not to be defeated so easily. He dodged the dart and struck back, sending Trishake tumbling to the ground. As the Trigarta warriors watched their comrades fall, they rallied behind Dharmuka, a brave prince from their clan. He 60 shafts at Sahadeva, but the Pandava warrior was unfazed. With a calm smile, he pierced Dharmuka with many keen arrows and then struck him again with 9 shafts. The Trigarta prince's standard was cut down by Sahadeva's broad-headed arrow, and his 4 steeds were struck down with 4 other arrows. Dharmuka leaped from his chariot, but Sahadeva was relentless. He cut off the Trigarta Prince Charioteer's head with a razor-faced arrow, and then pierced Dharmuka himself with 5 arrows. The Trigarta warrior fearlessly jumped onto the battlefield was abuzz with activity as Sanjaya recounted the tale of the Pandavas' valorous deeds. In the midst of this chaos, the illustrious son of Samadatta, a formidable warrior, clashed with the 5 sons of Draupadi and Nakula's brothers, Yudhishthira, Emma, Arjuna, and Sahadeva. The air was electric with tension as these great bowmen faced off against each other. The son of Samadatta unleashed his fury upon them, piercing each of them with 5 arrows, followed by 7 more. The Pandavas were stunned, their minds reeling from the ferocity of the attack. But they quickly regrouped and counterattacked, each brother striking down the warrior's son with 3 swift shafts. The illustrious son of Samadatta retaliated, firing 5 arrows that struck his foes in the chest. The battle raged on, with both sides trading blows and neither gaining the upper hand. But then a new challenger emerged, Satnak, the son of Nakula, who pierced the warrior's son with 2 swift arrows. The other brothers quickly joined in surrounding their foe and firing arrow after arrow at him. The air was filled with the whizzing sound of shafts as they clashed, each one seeking to outdo the others. But it was not just the Pandavas who were fighting valiantly. The Rakshasa, Alamvasha, had also entered the fray. Alamvasha, a fearsome warrior from the realm of the gods, fought with Demesna like a demon and a god. Combined, the two clashed in a spectacular display of martial prowess, each one determined to emerge victorious. Bhima laughed as he fired 9 arrows at Alamvasha, but the Rakshasa was unfazed and undeterred. Bhima drew his mighty bow and fired arrow after arrow at Alamvasha, striking him with every shot. But the Rakshasa refused to yield, assuming various forms and roars like thunder, unleashing a torrent of arrows upon the Pandavas. The battlefield was transformed into a river of blood as the Rakshasa's downpour of arrows slaughtered countless warriors, elephants, and steeds. The very earth itself seemed to tremble with fear as Alamvasha continued his rampage. But Bhima refused to back down, firing arrow after arrow at the Rakshasas. The battle raged on. The Pandavas grew anxious, their hearts filled with concern for their brother's safety. But Demesna stood firm, his rage and fury driving him forward like a mighty storm. With eyes blazing red as copper, he fired the Tashtri weapon, unleashing thousands of arrows that scattered the Rakshasa's force as the Rakshasa was struck in every part of his body by Bhima's arrows, and with a defeated cry, he fled towards. The sun beat down on the battlefield as the war between the Pandavas and the Rakshasas raged on. Sanjaya watched from a distance, his eyes fixed on the 2 mighty warriors who clashed in a frenzy of steel and magic. Alamvasha, the Rakshasa prince, carried fearlessly through the battle lines, his keen shafts striking true time and again. But Ghatotkacha, the son of Hidimba, was not one to be underestimated. With a fierce cry, he rushed forward, his own arrows piercing Alamvasha's chest like hot pokers. The 2 warriors invoked their illusions, creating fantastical deceptions that threatened to confuse and disorient each other, but neither could gain the upper hand, and the battle raged on, with both sides trading blows and counter blows in a dizzying display of speed and strength. As the fight intensified, the Pandavas grew anxious, fearing for their only safety. They rallied around Ghatotkacha, surrounding him with a phalanx of warriors who showed Alamvasha with arrows like autumn leaves. But the Rakshasa prince was not to be defeated so easily. With a lull of triumph, he conjured up an illusion that baffled the Pandavas' attacks, sending their shafts flying harmlessly into thin air. Undeterred, Ghatotkacha and his comrades pressed on, their arrows biting deep into Alamvasha's armor. But still the Rakshasa prince refused to yield, drawing his terrible bow and unleashing a hail of shafts that seemed to shake the very foundations of the earth. The battle was at its most intense when Ghatotkacha suddenly seized Alamvasha by the throat, lifting him from his chariot like a bird taking flight. With a mighty roar, he hurled the Rakshasa prince to the ground, where he lay broken and still, his limbs shattered like autumn leaves. As the news of Alamvasha's defeat spread through the Pandava army, their warriors let out a triumphant cry, their conspiring out in joy. But among the Kauravas there was only sorrow and despair as they mourned the loss of one of their bravest warriors. And Ghatotkacha, his chest heaving with exertion, stood victorious, his name etched forever into the annals of war as a hero of unyielding courage and strength. The sun beat down upon the battlefield as Dhritarashtra, king of the Kauravas, leaned forward in curiosity to hear Sanjaya's account of the battle between Drona and Yuyudhana. "Tell me, O Sanjaya," he said, his voice filled with eagerness, "how did Yuyudhana fare against the son of Bharadwaj?" Sanjaya cleared his throat before beginning his tale. Drona, the great warrior, had been battling Yuyudhana, and it was as if the two were engaged in a dance of death. Drona's arrows shot forth like golden-winged birds, piercing Yuyudhana with deadly precision. The Sanjaya spoke the scene unfolded before Dhritarashtra's eyes. Drona, his bow singing with each release, firing arrow after arrow at Yuyudhana, who stood firm against the onslaught. But just as it seemed that Drona would emerge victorious, Satyaki, a warrior of unyielding prowess, hit Urban with 25 arrows. He struck Drona, sending him reeling back. The battle raged on, with neither side yielding an inch. Yuyudhana's face grew pale as the son of Bharadwaj unleashed a hail of arrows, each one finding its mark. As the fight continued, Dhritarashtra's sons and troops watched in awe, their roars echoing across the battlefield like a chorus of lions. King Yudhishthira, observing the chase from afar, knew he had to act. Swiftly, he called out to his soldiers, "That brave Satyaki is about to fall prey to Drona's arrows. Go and rush to his aid." With these words, he dispatched Prishad Yama to confront Drona. The battle reached its climax as the Pandavas and Srinjaya's charged towards Drona. The air was filled with the sound of clashing steel. The scent of sweat and blood hanging heavy over the battlefield. Drona stood firm, his arrows slicing through the enemy ranks like a set cutting through wheat. But Yudhishthira's words had not fallen on deaf ears. As the Pandavas approached, he urged Satyaki, "Render aid to Arjuna, who was in dire need of assistance. O grandfather of Sinai," he said, his voice choked with emotion, "I beg of you to protect my brother. You are our greatest well-wisher and the hero among heroes. Render him aid in this time of distress." Satyakai's face set in determination as he listened to Yudhishthira's words. He knew that he was the only one who could save Arjuna from Drona's deadly arrows. With a resolute heart, he vowed to do what needed to be done as Sanjaya. In the midst of a grand assembly, Satyakai, a skilled warrior and one of the most devoted followers of King Yudhishthira, stepped forward to address his beloved leader. His words were laced with affection, sweet sounds, and an unwavering commitment to protect the king at all costs. "My lord," Satyakai began, "I have listened intently to your words, filled with justice, delight, and fame for the sake of Falguna." He referred to Arjuna, Yudhishthira's brother, who was renowned for his unmatched prowess on the battlefield. With an unshakable resolve, Satyakai pledged to cast aside his own life, if necessary, to ensure Dhananjaya's safety. As he spoke, Satyakai acknowledged the formidable forces arrayed against them, the army of Sayodhana, led by the powerful and vengeful Kauravas. Yet with unwavering confidence, he declared that he would vanquish their foes in battle single-handedly. If needed today, he vowed, "I shall fight against the entire army of Sayodhana and emerge victorious." Satyakai's words were not mere boasts. They were a testament to his unyielding devotion to Yudhishthira and Arjuna. He implored the king to entrust him with the protection of their forces, particularly in light of Drola's vow to seize the monarch. With an air of quiet authority, Satyakai revealed that he had been solicited by Vasudeva Krishna and Arjuna himself to safeguard Yudhishthira until Jayadratha was slain. As Satyakai concluded his impassioned plea, King Yudhishthira listened intently, though his heart still harbored some concern for his brother's safety. He acknowledged the gravity of the situation. "It is even so," he said to Satyakai, "as you have said, O mighty armed one." With a sense of resolve, Yudhishthira entrusted Satyakai with the protection of their forces, recognizing that the warrior's commitment was unwavering and his prowess unmatched. As Satyakai prepared to depart for Arjuna's side, he reassured the king that Bhima would safeguard him in the interim. The mighty Bhima, along with other noble warriors, Prishada's son, Draupadi's sons, Drupada, Prashtatu, and many others, would protect Yudhishthira from harm. The king's anxiety began to dissipate as he realized that his forces were strong and capable of defending him against the formidable Drona. Satyakai departed for Arjuna's side. He carried with him the knowledge that their combined strength would ensure the safety of both Yudhishthira and Dhananjaya. The sun was setting over the battlefield, casting a golden glow over the sea of warriors. King Yudhishthira, just and wise as he had given his command to Satyakai, the hero invincible in battle, to proceed towards Arjuna with caution. But Satyakai's heart burned with courage and loyalty. He knew that if he were to disobey the king's order, the people would call him a coward. "Let not people say that I am afraid of proceeding towards Arjuna," Satyakai said to himself, his mind racing with determination. He reflected on this thought repeatedly, weighing the consequences of his actions. Finally, he approached King Yudhishthira and spoke to him in words filled with conviction. "If thou thinkest that these arrangements will suffice for thee protection, O monarch, I will then do thee bidding and follow Vivatsa." Satyakai said, using Arjuna's other name, "I tell thee truly, O king, that there is none in the three worlds who is dearer to me than Falguna. I will follow in his track at thy command, O giver of honor." Satyakai's words were like a balm to King Yudhishthira's heart. He knew that Satyakai was not one to shy away from danger. The king looked out upon the battlefield, where thousands of warriors stood ready for battle. Among them were the Rukmira, the skilled in fighting from cars and elephants, and the Karatas, difficult to defeat in battles. I gazed at these warriors with a fierce determination in his eyes. "I shall pierce through this impenetrable host like a fish through the sea," he said to himself. He knew that his path would be fraught with danger, but he was undaunted, for Satyakai's loyalty and bravery were matched only by his love for Arjuna. He spoke. King Yudhishthira nodded in approval. "You shall follow in the track of Savyasachan," he said, using another name. "For Arjuna, I know that place whether I shall have to go more, teeming as this Assyrian like host doth with plowshare and darts, and masses, and shields and scimitars, and swords and lances, and foremost of shafts. I will today agitate this Assyrian Zedekiah's heart, swelled with pride and courage. He knew that he was about to face the greatest challenge of his life, but he also knew that he would not falter, for he was Zedekiah the hero, invincible in battle is. He prepared for battle Zedekiah. Thought of all the warriors who stood before him, there were the Chemoges, brave and accomplished, with golden standards and difficult to resist, and there were the Sagasphars, as fire. The sun beat down on the battlefield as king. Yudhishthira's forces clashed with those of Duryodhana amidst the chase. Duryodhana, also known as Zedekiah, rode into battle, his eyes fixed on the enemy lines, his chariot adorned with golden wings, and feathers from the canker and peacock birds hurtled forward like a fiery countess. He approached the fray. His comrades cheered him on, urging him to strike quickly and vanquish their foes. We will conquer those who dare try to defeat Zedekiah. They shouted in unison with the fierce battle cry. Zedekiah charged into the heart of the Kirava army, his arrows flying like a swarm of locusts. The enemy lines faltered as Zedekiah's shafts rained down upon them. His steeds, their golden trappings glistening in the sunlight, galloped effortlessly across the battlefield, leaving a trail of destruction in their wake. The earth itself seemed to tremble beneath the hoofs of his chariot, as if it were a mighty elephant treading through the land as Zedekiah rode forward. The Kirava warriors cowered before him, their hearts filled with fear and awe. None dared challenge him directly, for they knew that he was a force to be reckoned with. His arrows seemed to come from nowhere, and everywhere at once, striking true. Time and again the battle raged on, with Zedekiah at center. He clashed with Drona, the great preceptor, who shot arrow after arrow in an attempt to bring him down. But Zedekiah was undeterred, his focus fixed on following in the tracks of Arjuna, his revered mentor. I will not deviate from my duty, he declared to Drona. I am but a disciple, and it is for me to follow in the footsteps of my preceptor. With that he turned away from Drona and continued onward, his chariot thundering across the battlefield. As Zedekiah rode through the Kirava lines, he came face to face with Kritavarman, a formidable warrior who stood tall amidst the fray. The two clashed in a flurry of arrows, their battle cries echoing across the landscape. In the end it was Zedekiah's superior skill that proved decisive, and Kritavarman fell to his shafts. But even as he triumphed over his foes, Zedekiah knew that his greatest challenge lay ahead, for in the heart of the Kirava army the mighty Duryodhana himself waited, his eyes fixed on the grandson of Sinai with a fierce determination. The battle would not be won so easily. It would take all of Zedekiah's strength and cunning to emerge victorious in the end. The sun beat down upon the vast army of Dhritarashtra, stretching out before him like a seemingly endless scene. His advisor Sanjaya stood by his side, listening intently as he began to extol the virtues of their forces. My army is equally possessed of many excellences, Dhritarashtra declared. It is equally regarded as superior, arrayed according to the rules of science, and numerous. He paused, surveying the sea of soldiers before him. The soldiers are neither too old nor too young, lean nor corpulent. They are active, well-developed, and strong, free from diseases. He spoke. Dhritarashtra's eyes roamed over the ranks, taking in the armor-clad warriors, their mail glinting in the sunlight. He was proud of his army, and Sanjaya could sense his pride swelling with each passing moment. But what can it be but destiny that even such an army should be slain? Dhritarashtra mused, his voice tinged with a hint of despair, when Arjuna, that bull among the Pandavas, pierced through my army like the Assyrian, and Duryodhana followed close behind. I did not see the prospect of even a remnant of my troops being left alive. Sanjaya listened attentively as Dhritarashtra recounted the events of the battle. He spoke of how his sons had fought bravely, but to no avail against the combined might of Arjuna and Krisha. The Kirava king's words were laced with a deep sense of sorrow, as if he were mourning not just the loss of his army, but also the failure of his own family. As Dhritarashtra continued to speak, Sanjaya could see the weight of grief bearing down upon him. His eyes seemed sunken, his voice heavy with emotion. The advisor's heart went out to the king, who was struggling to come to terms with the devastating consequences of his own actions. Formerly, many of the wise well-wishers had told thee, do not abandon the sons of Pandav. Sanjaya said gently, breaking into Dhritarashtra's lamentations, but thou didst not heed their words. The man that heedeth not the counsels of well-wishing friends weepeth, falling into great distress. Like this self-Dhritarashtra's gaze faltered, and for a moment Sanjaya thought he saw a glimmer of understanding in his eyes. But it was quickly replaced by a deepening sense of despair as the king realized that his own actions had led to this terrible outcome. The battle had been fierce and intense, with both sides suffering heavy losses. Dhritarashtra's army had been like a vast scene, but Arjuna and Krishna had pierced through its depths, leaving devastation in their wake. And now, in the midst of a fierce battle, Sanjaya turned to King Dhritarashtra and said, "Listen carefully, my king. After the defeat of Kritavarman's forces by Arjuna, the Parthas were humiliated, but your army was filled with joy in that moment of triumph." Satyaki, the grandson of Sinai, heard the commotion of your troops and quickly turned back to face Kritavarman. Once more as he approached, Kritavarman's wrath grew, and he covered Satyaki with a cloud of sharp arrows. But Satyaki was unfazed. His rage ignited by the challenge, he swiftly shot 4 arrows at Kritavarman, striking down his steeds and cutting off his bow. The charioteer and those protecting Kritavarman's rear were also pierced by Satyaki's keen shafts. The hostile division, afflicted by Satyaki's arrows, began to falter and break down. Undaunted, Satyaki continued on his way, filled with a sense of purpose. As he crossed the scene of Drona's division, now vanquished, he felt a surge of joy at having defeated Kritavarman. Satyaki addressed his charioteer, "Proceed slowly, without fear." But as they approached the enemy lines, Satyaki spotted a large division led by Rukmira. Its leader. These elephants were many and formidable, eager to engage in battle with Satyaki. Urged on by Duryodhana, they prepared to cast away their liver. Satyaki's charioteer urged the steeds forward, and the white horses bore him towards the Trigartas. As he approached, the brave warriors surrounded him with their elephants, showering him with arrows that could pierce anything. Satyaki fought back, his shafts flying like a mighty cloud at the end of summer. Pouring rain on the mountain braced the elephants, slaughtered by Satyaki's arrows, began to flee in all directions. Their tusks were broken, their bodies covered in blood, and they ran wildly, uttering cries of pain. Many of them limped or fell down, while others wandered aimless. After the elephant division was exterminated, Jalasandha, a mighty warrior from Magadha, led his elephant before Satyaki's chariot, cased in golden armor and adorned with precious stones. He looked resplendent like a cloud charged with lightning, but Satyaki checked him with his excellent shafts, and the 2 warriors flashed. Jalasandha pierced Satyaki on his broad chest with sharp arrows, but Satyaki did not flinch. He smiled as he replied to Jalasandha's attacks, cutting off his bow and then piercing him with 60 arrows. With another razor-faced arrow, he cut off Jalasandha's arms. The sun beat down on the battlefield as the warriors clashed, their armor glittering in the lights. Sanjaya watched from a distance, his voice filled with awe as he described the fight. Drona, the renowned teacher of Arjuna, struck Yuyutana with 77 sharp arrows. Durmarshana followed suit, piercing him with a dozen swift shafts. Dasasana joined in, firing 10 arrows that bit deep into Yuyutana's armor. Vikarna to aim for the Vrishni warrior, striking him on the left side and center of his chest with 30 keen arrows. But Yuyutana, undaunted, countered each blow with precision and skill. He pierced Drona with 3 shafts, Dasasana with 9, Vikarna with 5, and 20 Chitrasna with 7, Durmarshana with a dozen, Vivinsatai with 8, Satyavrata with 9, Vijaya with 10, and Rukmagada with swift arrows. The battle raged on. Yuyutana's aim never wavered. He shook his bow, releasing cloud after cloud of shafts that seemed to rain down upon his enemies like a storm. The Kuru warriors, including Duryodhana, son of Dhritarashtra, were no match for Yuyutana's unyielding fury. Duryodhana himself was struck by Satyaki with countless arrows, and his bow was cut off by the razor-faced arrow of Madhava. The king stumbled, his armor dented, but he quickly recovered and took up another formidable bow. With this new whip on Duryodhana pierced Yuyutana with 100 swift arrows. The Vrishni warrior's wrath flared anew as he saw his enemy thus afflicted. He began to afflict Duryodhana, in turn striking him with 8 swift arrows and cutting off the king's bow that had frightened all foes. With a few more arrows, Satyaki felled the king's standard adorned with a jeweled elephant and slew the 4 steeds of Duryodhana. Meanwhile, Yuyutana pierced each of the Kuru warriors who had shrouded him in dense showers of arrows with 5 and 7 swift shafts. Illustrious Satyaki was unstoppable, his prowess unmatched, as he felled the king's charioteer with a razor-faced shaft. Duryodhana for the battlefield, his cries echoed through the Kuru host. Kritavarman, son of Hridika, hastened to the scene. shaking his bow and urging his steeds forward. He pierced Yudhana with 26 whetted arrows, but the Vrishni warrior merely smiled as he countered each blow. Zedekiah's driver was struck by crit of Armin, but the grandson of Sinai swiftly fired 8 swift arrows at the sun. The battle raged on, with Sanjaya watching from a distance as the Kuru army trembled before Arjuna's prowess. Drona, son of Bharadwaja, unleashed a torrent of arrows upon him. The encounter between these two mighty warriors was far reminiscent of the legendary battles of old. Drona pierced Arjuna's forehead with 3 iron-tipped arrows resembling venomous snakes, but Arjuna, like a mountain with 3 summits, stood tall and unwavering. Drona thence more arrows at him, each one resembling Indra's thunderbolt. However, Arjuna was not to be underestimated. He countered every arrow shot by Drona. With 2 beautifully winged arrows of his own, the 2 warriors continued to exchange blows. Their skill and speed unmatched. Drona pierced Arjuna with 30, then 50, and finally 100 arrows, the latter like snakes bursting forth from an anthill. But Arjuna was not one to back down. He retaliated with hundreds and thousands of blood-drinking arrows that covered Drona's chariot. Sanjaya observed that both warriors displayed an uncanny lightness of hand, each matching the other in speed and accuracy. The battle raged on, with neither side giving quarter. Arjuna struck Drona with 9 straight arrows, while also targeting his standard and driver with multiple shafts. Drona, however, was not to be defeated so easily. He countered every blow with an arrow of his own, cutting off the standard on Madhava's chariot, and then shattering his bow with a broad-headed arrow. Enraged Arjuna hurled a massive iron mass at Drona, but the latter deflected it with multiple arrows. As the battle reached its climax, both warriors unleashed their most potent arrows. Drona shot an iron-tipped dart that pierced through Arjuna's chariot and into the earth, causing a deafening crash. But Arjuna retaliated by striking Drona on the right arm with winged arrows, severely wounding him. The 2 warriors continued to exchange blows, neither gaining the upper hand. However, as Satyaka's driver fell from his wounds, Arjuna took up the reins himself and continued fighting with Drona, the mighty Kar warrior, and struck Drona with 100 arrows, rejoicing at his triumph. Drona, however, refused to yield. He shot 5 more arrows at Arjuna, each one piercing his armor and drinking in his blood. Enraged Arjuna returned the favor by shooting multiple shafts at Drona's chariot. With a single arrow, he felled the driver of Drona's chariot, causing it to flee in terror as the Kaurava army watched in awe their mighty warrior Drona. The sun was setting over the battlefield, casting a golden glow over the carnage. Sanjaya, the charioteer, gazed at his master Satyaki with a mix of awe and reverence. They had just emerged victorious from a fierce battle against the Kaurava warriors. Led by the son of Haradikas, they rode their white steeds, their armor glinting in the fading light. Sanjaya turned to Satyaki and said, "Our foes have already been vanquished by Kizarva and Falguna. We've only been the means." Satyaki smiled, his eyes gleaming with amusement as he replied, "We've slain the dead. My friend with a fire cry." Satyaki charged into battle once more, his arrows flying through the air like a hawk, swooping down on its prey. The Kuru warriors attacked him from all sides, but none could resist. A might of Yudhana, he rode through their ranks like a sun bursting forth in all its glory, leaving a trail of destruction in his wake. He pierced the Kaurava lanes. Sudarsana, the king's warrior, urged to challenge Satyaki, clad in golden armor, armed with bow and arrows, and filled with rage. Sudarsana advanced against the rushing Satyaki. The 2 warriors clashed in a fierce encounter, their arrows flying back and forth like a dance of death. The battle raged on, with both sides trading blows and neither gaining the upper hand. But Satyaki's prowess was unmatched, his arrows piercing through Sudarsana's defenses like a hot knife through butter. Sudarsana retaliated with hundreds of sharp shafts, but Satyaki's armor held strong, deflecting each blow. Enraged by his failure to pierce Satyaki's armor, Sudarsana unleashed a barrage of golden-tipped arrows shot from his bowstring, drawn to the ear. But even these powerful missiles were no match for Satyaki's defenses. The prince aimed 4 blazing arrows at Sudarsana's steeds, striking them down with ease. Seizing the opportunity, Satyaki swiftly slew Sudarsana's driver and then cut off the king's head with a broad-headed arrow, sending it flying through the air like a severed branch. As the dust settled, Satyaki stood victorious, his armor battered, but unbroken. With a triumphant cry, he rode on his steeds, galloping towards the horizon. All who saw him pass by were amazed by his prowess, their hearts filled with awe and reverence for the mighty Yudhana. Like a conflagration consuming all in its path. Satyakaya devoured every foe that dared to stand before him. The sun beat down upon the battlefield as Satyakaya, the mighty warrior from Vrishnai's race, stood tall in his chariot. His driver Sudab looked up at him with a mixture of awe and reverence. "Fear not, O Satyakaya," he said, "for you have vanquished countless foes before us. The Ocean of Drona's division, teeming with cars, steeds, and elephants, has been crossed by your prowess." Satyakaya smiled, his eyes gleaming with confidence. "I am but a mere mortal," he said, "yet I have faced the greatest warriors of our time. Drona himself fell before me, as did the son of Pridika, and now I sense the Arjuna. The diadem-decked warrior is near. His chariot, with Krishna at his side, has left a trail of destruction in its wake." Sutta nodded eagerly, urging the steeds to greater speed. "We are but a short distance from Dhananjaya," he said. Satyakaya's eyes sparkled as he gazed out upon the battlefield. The Kaurava army, led by Duryodhana, was fleeing before him, their ranks broken and disorganized. They approached. Satyakaya spotted the Yavanas, a fierce tribe of warriors with shaved heads. They were armed to the teeth. But Satyakaya was undaunted like Vasava destroying the Danavas. He said, "I shall slay these warriors and fulfill my vow." With a fierce cry, he charged forward, his arrows flying straight and true. A battle raged on, with Satyakaya cutting down Yavanas left and right. His chariot was a whirlwind of destruction, leaving a trail of blood and bodies in its wake. The Kaurava army was thrown into chaos as Satyakaya's arrows sliced through their ranks, taking out Kamboja, and Barbaras with ease. The sun began to set. The battlefield was strewn with the headless trunks of the slain Yavanas. Their shaved heads looked like feederless birds, while their bodies lied the earth red with blood. Satyakaya's arrows had created a sea of carnage, leaving the Kaurava army reeling in its wake. And yet amidst the chaos and destruction, Satyakaya felt a sense of peace wash over him. He knew that he was doing what was right, fighting for his brothers and his people. As he stood tall in his chariot, his eyes scanning the battlefield, he felt a deep connection to the land and its warriors. The Kaurava army, led by Duryodhana, was in disarray, their ranks broken and their spirits crushed. Satyakaya's prowess had shown them the measure of his might and energy, and they knew that they could not. The sun was setting over the battlefield, casting a golden glow over the assembled armies of the Kauravas and the Pandavas. Sanjaya, the narrator, watched with rapt attention as Satyakaya, the fearless warrior from the Vrishai clan, made his way through the midst of the Kaurava troops like a hunter stalking its prey. Satyakaya moved stealthily, his golden armor glinting in the fading light. His beautiful standard, adorned with intricate designs, fluttered behind him as he rode towards Arjuna's army. The air was filled with the sound of clashing steel and the scent of sweat and blood. As Satyakaya approached, his bow sang out with a loud twang, shaking its golden staff with great force. His arrows flew swift and true, striking down Kaurava warriors like autumn leaves before an autumn gale. The earth trembled beneath his feet as he rode his charioteer, urging the steeds on with cries of "Rush away!" The Kauravas, led by Duryodhana and Sakanai, hurled themselves at Satyakaya, their arrows flying thick and fast. But the grandson of Sinai was a force to be reckoned with, his prowess in battle rivaling that of Indra himself. With each passing moment, he seemed to grow more formidable, his arrows striking true time and again. The carnage was terrible to behold as Satyakaya's shafts cut through the Kaurava ranks like a scythe through wheat. Duryodhana, Sakanai, Dasesana, all were struck down by the fearless warrior, their bodies pierced with arrow after arrow. The earth was slick with blood, and the air reeked of death. But Satyakaya was not content to simply slaughter his enemies. He fought with a purpose, each shot calculated to bring him closer to his goal. His eyes blazed with a fierce light as he rode forward, his charioteer urging the steeds on with cries of "Rush wit!" And then in an instant it was over. The Kaurava warriors fled in disarray, their chariots abandoned and their horses scattered. Satyakaya stood victorious, his bow still singing out as he rode towards Arjuna's armies. The dust-saddled Sanjaya gazed upon the carnage with a sense of awe. "Behold, O king," he said to Dhritarashtra, "the prowess of Duryodhana is truly a wonder to behold. He is a warrior unlike any other, his skill and strength unmatched." The old king nodded grandly, his eyes fixed on Satyakaya as he rode off into the distance. For in that moment it was clear Satyakaya was no ordinary man. He was a force of nature, a storm that would not be contained. The sun beat down upon the battlefield as Dhritarashtra, the blind king of Hastinapura, sat in his chambers, his mind consumed by worry and concern. He called for Sanjaya, his trusted advisor, to recount the events of the day's battle. Behold of Sanjaya. Dhritarashtra said, I see Arjuna, the grandson of Sinai, marching towards us with a force that seems insurmountable. What have my sons done when Yudhana, that mighty warrior equal to Arjuna in prowess, stood before them? How could they set their hearts on battle? Sanjaya began his tell. My king, it was your son Duryodhana who commanded the Samsaptakas to rally and fight fiercely. 3,000 bowmen, led by Duryodhana, along with Sakas, Camodius, Valakas, Evanus, Haridas, Kalinis, Tanganus, Amashus, Pisakas, barbers, and mountaineers rushed against Arjuna like insects to a blazing fire. As Sanjaya spoke, Dhritarashtra's anxiety grew, and what of Satyaki? He asked, how could he pass through them in battle? Sanjaya continued, a mighty body consisting of 1,000 cars, 100 great car warriors, 1,000 elephants, 2,000 heroes, and countless foot soldiers rushed against Arjuna. Thus Sesana urged all those warriors to slay Satyaki, who was surrounded by them. The king's concern turned to awe as Sanjaya described the battle that ensued like the autumnal firmament bespangled with stars. The field of battle became strewn with carved wheels, broken and crushed by Arjuna's mighty whip-ons. The fragments of those stones, looking like a swarm of blazing fireflies, slew many combatants. There Dhritarashtra's eyes widened as he listened to Sanjaya's tale. And what of the mountaineers? He asked. Sanjaya replied, they, armed with huge stones, stood before Arjuna in that battle. Others, urged by your son and desirous of slaying Satyaki, encompassed him on all sides, armed with missiles. The king's face fell as Sanjaya described the slaughter that followed. Satyaki slew many thousand warriors, fighting with stones. He said, all this seemed exceedingly wonderful as the battle raged on. Drona, the great warrior and teacher of the Kauravas, addressed his charioteer, take us to the spot whence this furious uproar is coming. Without doubt, Yudhana is engaged with the mountaineers who battle with stones. The charioteer replied, my lord, As the battle raged on, Sanjaya watched as Dasesana's chariot fled from the Singh. The son of Bharadwaja, Drona, was enraged at this courtly act. He approached Dasesana, his voice stern and commanding. Dasesana, why do you flee from battle? You are a prince, a brother of the king, and a mighty warrior. What has happened to your courage? Drona asked, his words laced with disappointment. Dasesana remained silent, feigning not to have heard Drona's words. He proceeded to the spot where Satyaki was engaged in battle, accompanied by a large force of Mlechas. The two warriors clashed, and Dasesana fought vigorously against Satyaki. Meanwhile, Drona rushed into the fray, his chariot piercing through the Pandava ranks like a hot knife through butter. He began to crush their warriors by hundreds and thousands, his arrows flying swift and true. The sight of Drona's prowess was awe-inspiring, and even Sanjaya couldn't help but marvel at it. As Drona continued to fight, he encountered the illustrious Viratu, who pierced him with 5 straight shafts, but Drona refused to yield, shooting back a shower of arrows that sent Viratu's charioteer and standard flying. The prince then followed up with 7 more arrows, striking Viratu's chariot and sending it crashing to the ground. Of Pancalus, inspired by their victory, surrounded Drona, on all sides raining down arrows and lances upon him. But Drona, like a stormy cloud, scattered their attacks with ease, his own arrows flying back at them like a swarm of locusts. As the battle raged on, Chitraketus, Satanwan, Chitravarman, and Chitrarata joined forces against Drona. Struck by their shafts, Drona shot back showers of arrows that sent those mighty warriors stumbling back, where the son of Bharadwaja continued to fight with unmatched ferocity, his arrows flying swift and true. He cut down the 4 princes like a skilled gardener plucking flowers from a tree. Their bodies fell from their chariots, crashing to the ground like fallen trees. Trishadhyama, enraged by Drona's slaughter of his brothers, rushed against him with a mighty cry. But even as he struck Drona with many straight shafts, the son of Bharadwaja refused to yield. He sat down on the terrace of his chariot, pierced in the chest, but still fighting. Trishadhyama was taken aback by Drona's resilience, and for a moment he laid aside his bow. But as he gazed upon Drona's fallen, the sun beat down upon the battlefield as Dhritarashtra, king of the Kauravas, gazed out at his assembled army. He turned to Sanjaya, his charioteer and advisor, and asked, tell me, Sanjaya, how did Satyaki, the grandson of Sinai, manage to pass through our vast host and reach Arjuna unscathed? Sanjaya's eyes widened as he began to recount the tale. Your Majesty, I have never seen such a sight in all my years. The army you assembled was like nothing the world had ever seen before. It was as if the gods themselves had come to witness the battle. When when your host clashed with that of the Pandavas. The noise was deafening. It was like the thunder of the Essene, itself lashed into fury by a storm. Thousands of kings, each one a hero in his own right, fought bravely alongside you. Sanjaya spoke. Dhritarashtra's anxiety grew. But what of Duryodhana? He asked, his voice trembling with concern. How did he fare against the might of the Pandavas? Sanjaya's expression turned somber as he began to describe the encounter between Duryodhana and the combined forces of the Panchalas and the Pandavas. Duryodhana, your valiant son, charged into the fray like an elephant crashing through a lake of lotus stalks. He fought with tenacity, piercing Bhimasa with 10 arrows, each of the twins with 3, and King Yudhishthira with 7. He even struck Virata and Drupada with 6 arrows, Sikhandan with 100, and Drishtadyumna with 20. Sanjaya spoke. The scene unfolded before Dhritarashtra's mind's eye. He saw his son Duryodhana fighting with all his might, his bow drawn in a perpetual circle as he unleashed arrow after arrow at his foes. But despite his valiant efforts, Duryodhana was eventually wounded by Yudhishthira's arrow. Sanjaya continued to recount the tale of the battle, describing how Drona, the renowned teacher and warrior, joined the fray to rescue his king. The battle raged on with both sides trading blows and neither gaining the upper hand. In the midst of this chaos, Arjuna clashed with Drona's bowmen, while Satyaki fought against the Kauravas. Sanjaya finished speaking. Dhritarashtra eased out at his son, now lying wounded on the battlefield. He felt a pang of sorrow and regret, knowing that his own pride and ambition had led to this moment. The battle would continue for many days, yet but one thing was certain: nothing would ever be the same again. The sun beat down on the battlefield, casting a golden glow over the chaos that unfolded before it. In the midst of this maelstrom, Drona, the renowned preceptor and warrior, rode forth on his chariot, its steeds' hooves pounding out a rhythmic cadence. As he charged into battle, he approached the Pandavas lines. The sound of clashing steel and the cries of the wounded filled the air. Drona's eyes blazed with determination, his focus fixed on the enemy before him. With each passing moment his speed increased, his arrows flying swift and true as he struck down warrior after warrior. Among those who dared oppose him was Rahakshetra, a mighty Kar warrior of the Kaikyas, known for his unyielding ferocity in battle. The two clashed their bows, singing out as they exchanged arrow for arrow. Each shot whizzing past with deadly precision. Drona's wrath grew with every passing moment, and he summoned the celestial Brahma, whereupon from the depths of his being the prince of the Kakeyas beheld this marvel and was undaunted with a fierce cry. He counterattacked, unleashing 60 shafts that whetted on stone and shone like golden wings. The battle raged on each side, trading blows as the combatants clashed in a frenzy of steel and furious. Rahakshetra lay wounded, his son Sisupau's rage knew no bounds. He urged his charioteer to hasten to Drona's location, intent on avenging his father's wounds. The young warrior Trishtiktu rushed forward with a fire-spettled cry, his bow singing out as he loosed 60 shafts that pierced the air like a swarm of deadly insects. Drona smiled, unfazed by the onslaught. With a swift motion he cut down Trishtiktu's steeds and charioteer, their bodies crashing to the earth amidst the chaos. The son of Bharadwaja then turned his attention to Trishtiktu himself, piercing him with 25 arrows that seemed to drink in the light around them. The battle raged on each side, trading blows as the combatants clashed in a frenzy of steel and fury. But as the Pandavas began to falter, their ranks thinning under Drona's relentless onslaught, a new challenger emerged from the shadows, the heroic son of Jaris and Talak, a dark cloud shrouding the sun. He enveloped Drona with arrowy showers, rendering him all but invisible in the heat of battle. But Drona, that grandeur of Kshatriyas, was not to be underestimated. With a fierce cry he unleashed his own arsenal, each shaft flying swift and true as it struck down its targetus. The great battle raged on with the armies of the Pandavas and their allies facing off against the forces of the Kauravas. King Yudhishthira, watching from his chariot, grew increasingly anxious as he sought his brothers and friends fall around him. He scanned the battlefield, but there was no sign of Arjuna, the mighty warrior known as Falguna, or Satyaki, the fearless hero of the Vrishnaklin. Yudhishthira's anxiety turned to despair as he realized that both of these great warriors were missing in action. He had sent Satyaki to follow in Arjuna's footsteps, but now he feared for his safety as well. The king knew that if anything happened to either of them, the world would blame him for not doing enough to protect his friend. Yudhishthira decided to send Bhima, his powerful and loyal brother, to search for Satyaki and Arjuna. He called upon his charioteer to take him to Bhima's location And as they arrived, the king's grief was palpable. Yudhishthira explained to Bhima that he had received a disturbing omen, the sound of Vasugavaskund, shell Panchajanya being blown. An angel, the king told Bhima that Arjuna must have been killed, and that Janardana, Krisha, was fighting on. He said that Arjuna, relying on his own strength and prowess, had gone in search of the ruler of Sindhu, but had not yet returned. Yudhishthira's grief was overwhelming as he described Arjuna's bravery and might, and how he longed to see him safe and sound. The messenger listened intently to his brother's words and saw the depth of his sorrow. He reassured Yudhishthira that he would go to find Satyaki and Arjuna and bring back news of their safety. The king's eyes were filled with tears as he begged Bhima to hurry and to tell him if either of the two warriors had been injured or worse. As Bhima prepared to set out, Yudhishthira handed him a message to be delivered in case he found Satyaki and Arjuna safe. He asked his brother to roar like a lion when he gave the message, so that it would carry far across the battlefield with a heavy heart. Then mounted his chariot and rode off towards the fray, determined to bring back news of his brother's safety. In the midst of the great battle, Bhima, the mighty warrior and brother of Arjuna, stood ready to face the enemy. He had been tasked by their king, Yudhishthira, to join forces with his younger brother and Satyaki, a skilled warrior from the Vrishni clan with a sense of duty and loyalty. And set out on his chariot, his heart filled with determination as he prepared to depart. Drishtadyumna, a trusted friend and ally of the Pandavas, was left behind to protect Yudhishthira from the enemy's attacks. Bhima addressed him, saying, "It is known to you, O thou of mighty arms, how the mighty Kar warrior Drona is always on the alert to seize King Yudhishthira by all means in his power." He reassured Drishtadyumna that he would not abandon his duty as a protector, but felt compelled to follow his brother's command with a heavy heart and a sense of foreboding. Bhima bid farewell to his family and friends. King Yudhishthira himself came forward to bless him, embracing him tightly and pronouncing auspicious blessings upon him. The Brahmanas performed propitiatory ceremonies for Bhima, bestowing their good wishes upon him as he mounted his chariot. Bhima felt invigorated by the prophecies of success that surrounded him. His armor shone like a cloud charged with lightning, and his body was adorned in yellow and red robes. He grasped his bow and quiver, ready to face whatever lay ahead. The sound of Panchajanya, Arjuna's shell, echoed through the battlefield, signaling his presence. Bhima knew that his brother was battling fiercely against their enemies, and he felt a surge of determination to join him. With a mighty roar, he blew his own conch and summoned his troops. The forces of Drona, led by the preceptor himself, emerged from the shadows, ready to face them. The two armies clashed in a frenzy of steel and arrows, with Bhima at their forefront. He charged forward like a lion, his eyes blazing with fury as he targeted the elephant division that stood before him. The son of the wind god, mangling with his shafts, almost in no time dispersed the elephants in all directions. Like animals terrified in the forest, they fled away, uttering frightful cries. Then approached Drona's division, his chariot thundering across the battlefield. Drona himself stood tall like a continent, resisting the surging sea. Smilingly, he struck Bhima on his forehead with a shaft, but the son of Pandu merely looked resplendent like the sun with upward rays enraged by Dronas. The sun beat down upon the battlefield as Bhima, son of Pandu, led the charge against the army of Duryodhana. King of the Kuras, Sanjaya, a wise and skilled warrior, watched with keen eyes as Bhima effortlessly dodged the arrows shot by Drona. The preceptor, who sought to check his course undeterred, Bhima charged forward, his fierce roar echoing through the air like a lion's. As he advanced, many kings and great bowmen rushed to surround him, but Bhima was unyielding. He grasped his mighty mass, forged from adamant, and hurled it with incredible force at the enemy lines. The sound of its impact shook the earth, sending shockwaves through the ranks of Duryodhana's warriors. They fled in terror, their cries echoing through the battlefield. Drona, however, was not so easily defeated. He checked Bhima with his heroic showers, but the son of Pandu was relentless. With a mighty leap, he jumped from his chariot and rushed towards Drona. On foot, his eyes closed as if in meditation, the preceptor's arrows rained down upon him, but Bhima bore them with ease like a bull bearing the weight of a storm. As the battle raged on, Bhima seized Drona's chariot by its shaft and threw it to the ground. The preceptor quickly remounted another chariot and fled towards the gate of the array, his driver urging his steeds at full speed. This feat achieved by Vemesna was a wonder to behold. With his brother's chariot in hand, Vema rushed forward once more, crushing the Kshatriyas like a tempest crashing through rows of trees. He passed through the Polya and Kamolya divisions, leaving destruction in his wake until he came upon Satyaki. The mighty warrior engaged in battle. Vemesna approached. The sound of his palms sent shivers down the spines of Duryodhana's warriors. They fled in terror like deer attacked by a tiger. The son of Kunti pressed on, determined to reach Arjuna, who was fighting valiantly against the ruler of the Signed Huses. Bhima roared with battle lust. His voice echoed through the battlefield, heard by both Arjuna and Vasudeva. In the midst of the fight, both heroes responded with a mighty roar, their own carrying into battle like two raging bulls. Yudhishthira, son of Dharma, was overjoyed to hear the sounds of his brother's roars, and his heart swelled with gratitude as he watched the battle unfold. Yudhishthira reflected on the fate of his family. He thought of Arjuna, who had vanquished the Navasikavakas and slain. In the midst of the epic battle, Dhritarashtra's anxiety grew as he beheld Vemesna's unrelenting fury. Who can withstand this raging? Emma, he implored Sanjaya. Not even Sakrat himself could stand before him, armed with his mass, and resembling death incarnate. The king's words were laced with trepidation as he recounted the tales of his son's fallen hero Sanjaya, not gravely recounting the tale of Vema's encounter with Karna as Vemesna thundered his roars, echoing across the battlefield like the peals of thunder. Mighty Karna rushed forward, stretching his bow with great force. The two warriors clashed their bows, singing as they exchanged arrow for arrow. The earth trembled beneath their feet, and even the skies seemed to darken with the ferocity of their battle as sounds of their palms striking each other's shields sent shockwaves through the combatants' limbs, causing them to tremble. The mighty Kshatriyas regarded the entire world as being filled with the noise of Vema's roars. The bows of all warriors in that battle dropped to the ground, and even the steeds and elephants grew dispirited, ejecting their urine and excretus. The encounter between Vema and Karna reached its climax. Karna struck Vema with 20 arrows, piercing his charioteer with 5. But the mighty Vemesna merely smiled, speeding 64 arrows at Karna in rapid succession. He cut down Karna's bow at the handle, then pierced him with 10 straight arrows. The Su's son took up another bow, but Vema struck him with 3 straight shafts, causing blood to flow from his wounds like torrents of liquid. Red Chakarya, though afflicted by those mighty shafts, began to shoot arrows by hundreds and thousands. But Vemesna, undaunted, smiled as he cut off Karna's bowstring and dispatched his charioteer to the abode of Yama. With a final blow, he deprived Karna's 4 steeds of their lives. As the battle subsided, Karna jumped down from his carless steed and mounted Vrishesna's chariot. Vema, having vanquished Karna in battle, let out a thunderous roar that echoed across the battlefield like the peals of thunder. The sound was so deafening that even Yudhishthira's heart swelled with pride upon hearing it. The combatants of the Pandava army blew their cants from every side, drowning out all other sounds with the noise made by Vema's roar. Arjuna stretched Gandhava, and Krishna blew Panchajanya. But still the sound of Vema's thunderous voice was heard above them all. The two warriors, Karna and Vema, struck each other. The sun beat down on the battlefield as Duryodhana's chariot thundered towards Drona, his single-horse carriage moving with a speed that seemed almost supernatural. The young prince's eyes blazed with anger and frustration as he thought of the recent defeats suffered by their army at the hands of Arjuna, Vemesna, and Satyaki. He arrived before Drona. Duryodhana's words poured out like a torrent, his voice trembling with rage. O grandeur of foes, how could you have been defeated by those 3, O giver of honors? Your defeat is a wonder in this world, a drying up of the Essene itself. He spoke of the mocking whispers of their enemies who said that even Drona, the great master of arms, had been vanquished. Drona listened calmly to his son's outburst, his eyes reflecting a deep sadness. Listen, O king. He began, his voice measured and deliberate. I have given much thought to our situation. Only 3 great warriors among the Pandavas have broken through our lines so far, but we must be wary of Krishna and Arjuna, for they are the greatest danger. We face. He paused, surveying the battlefield before them. Our first duty is to protect Jayadratha, the ruler of the Saindhas. He is the stake in this game of battle, and we must defend him at all costs. Drona's words were like a clarion call, stirring Duryodhana's wrestle with his son by his side. Drona dispatched Duryodhana to protect Jayadratha, while he himself would stay behind to check the advance of the Panchalas and the Pandus. As Duryodhana rode off towards the battlefield, he was met with a fierce challenge from Udamanyu and Atamaljas, the two princes of Panchala, who were rushing towards Arjuna. Battle that followed was intense and chaotic, the sound of clashing steel and the cries of warriors filling the air. Duryodhana's charioteer fell, and his steeds were struck down by Udamanyu's arrows. But Duryodhana himself refused to yield, jumping down from his car and grabbing a mast to face the two princes. The earth shook as he pressed down on their car with his mighty mass, crushing it beneath him. The two Panchala